To me, the marathon is a beautiful struggle, a mentally and physically exhausting battle with oneself. It's a painful experience, yet it brings immense pleasure. It's truly poetic. I am 6 weeks away from running the Ballarat Marathon on April 27th. After a grueling 10 weeks of training in the Aussie heat, including a cyclone last week, I'm ready to fully commit to the next 4 peak weeks. I'll be introducing tougher sessions and higher mileage than ever before, all with the one goal I've been itching to tick off since Melbourne, the elusive 2:45 barrier. This is Project Ballarat 2:45. What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Project Ballarat 2:45. We are now 5 weeks out from the big dance. This is the Training Diaries, an episode where I deep dive into my previous week of training, a conversation regarding everything that goes into running a sub 2:45 marathon, so nutrition, workouts, total mileage, everything. It's a podcast style video that you can chuck on while the barber is fading your shit up for your next race. So last week I made history, truly record-breaking stuff. The first of 4 peak weeks commenced and I survived. I made it through 3 big marathon sessions and the biggest week of mileage that I've ever done to date. It was a total of 133 kilometers. Not bad, but in all seriousness, I'm actually pretty bloody proud of this week. It went exactly as planned, without any hiccups, which is almost unheard of. Today, I'm feeling a little bit tender in the legs, but I'm ready to take on the next of the 3 peak weeks. So you've heard me say peak week a lot. Basically, a peak week just means that I'm gonna be doing more mileage than I've ever done before, so upping the mileage, and all of my sessions are gonna be longer in duration and all marathon specific. I honestly have so much to talk about in this video, guys, so let's just get straight into it and let's deep dive into the week that was the 17th to the 23rd of March. Before we get into the Strava breakdown, just a reminder that the viewer Q&A will be after this. So all of those questions that you guys have sent through on my Instagram, I'll be answering them honestly and off the cuff, and that is all coming up later in the video. So you got that to look forward to. But let's get into our first day, and it's Monday. Start of the week, it's Monday. So if you watched the previous episode, you will know that 60 minutes on the treadmill is my sacred Mondays, where I catch up on anime for the week. So that's not gonna change at any time soon. So we had 60 minutes on the treadmill. I ran 5:15 pace, 11.42 kilometers in total, and I ran in the Neo Zens. Not much to comment on that, so let's just go straight on to Tuesday. So before I get into the rest of the week, all of the sessions that I'm gonna be doing in these peak weeks are all marathon specific, so I'm rarely gonna be running faster than marathon pace. It's all gonna be pretty much just trying to dial in that effort and make 3 minutes 50 per kilometer as easy and as efficient as possible. That is the goal. And I had 3 big marathon sessions this week, which I said earlier, I survived. And Tuesday is one of them. So let's get into it. Tuesday, we started off with a 5 kilometer warm up because I was running with the group, bread and butter, out and back, love and life. Did that one in the Neo Zens, shock. And then we get into the session. So for the session, I had a 4x2K workout with 90 seconds jog in between. So as you could probably guess, the 2 kilometer efforts were all aimed to be around that goal marathon pace of 3 minutes 50, which I definitely did here. So let's get into it. I did this session in the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB. That's my go-to session shoe. So unless I'm doing a long run, I'm probably gonna be doing my sessions in that shoe. So I've written here in the Strava upload bio that this is the first session where marathon pace felt easy / comfortable. I was honestly so chuffed with this session. Usually running marathon pace, it just doesn't feel good unless, you're super well fueled and in the super shoes on like a Sunday long run. But I was still yet to really feel this in training, and on Tuesday I officially felt this, and man, it was a good feeling. So let's get into it. The first 2K effort was done at 3:45 pace. The first rep is always going to be a little bit hot, but I was trying to keep it as controlled as possible. Obviously I was feeling really good, and it showed in that rep. Then we had a 90-second jog. So all of the 90-second jogs are in between 4:30 pace to 4:40 pace in a way. So a little bit of a float, but more of a recovery. Then we get into the second 2K rep. This one was 3:49. really starting to dial in that marathon pace and that marathon effort as well. And yeah, I was really starting to feel good. Third rep, we ran at 350, bang on, perfect. Could not be any better than that. And then the fourth rep was 349. I will admit this last rep was starting to get a bit tougher, but the way that I do the session out at the Spit is it's a bit of an out and back, which you can see here from the map. And it was a bit windy on those final 2 kilometers. And overall, the effort was a little bit higher, but I was still happy to kick off that 349 pace per average. And then for the cool down, I just did just under 2Ks to cool down to get to 15 or 16 Ks for the morning. So a beautiful 16K morning there ticked off on the Tuesday. Overall, probably like the happiest I've felt after a session, and I was gonna say the most proud, but basically it was just a massive confidence booster. Usually you're running around at marathon pace and you're thinking, geez, how could I do this for 42K? It's just not possible. This was one of those sessions where it was starting to feel possible. So yeah, smiles all around. Then Wednesday, moving on. Wednesday, we've got the midweek longie. This time I got to do it with some company. Rini and Marty are now back from Osaka, and they're ready to start doing midweek long runs. So they got to join me for this one. So we ended up doing just over 90 minutes, so an hour and 35 minutes. I got just over 20K, and it was 4:41 pace per kilometer average for the entire run. So running with people just makes life easier. It makes you run faster. That's why I love to do it, and I try to do it as much as possible. I ran in the Neo Zens once again. These are starting to get pretty beat up, but the good weighs out the bad of these shoes because they're keeping my toes happy. I like them, they're comfortable, and yeah, the main reason is they're keeping my toes happy. I did purchase another shoe that is arriving next week, which you'll probably hear about in the training diaries next week. I'm not gonna say anything about it yet, but I'm praying that it's gonna be a nice easy day / long run shoe. You will see a little bit of a trend this week. Obviously I did 10 kilometers more than I did in the previous week. So there is just little bits of mileage, a little bits of extra Ks that I've sort of sprinkled on throughout the week to make this possible. And to be honest, the week didn't actually feel all that different to the previous week where I ran 123 Ks and I ran a whole extra 10 Ks. But it just goes to show if you kind of sprinkle it in throughout the week, really doesn't seem like it affects you that much, and it's actually quite easy to build the mileage that way. But this is one of those days, so I did 20 Ks instead of my usual like 18 and a half. So a little 1.5 K sprinkle on the weekly mileage for that one. Then we move on to Thursday. So Thursday, it was raining and I took full advantage of the treadmill and I did 60 minutes on the treadie, 5-minute pace, nothing special, just a classic. And we got 12 Ks in. Did this one in the Neo Zens as well. Then in the afternoon, I did my Arvo double. Usually it's a 30 minutes, but because we're in the peak weeks, baby, we're sprinkling on, salt baying on some extra mileage. I did an extra 10 minutes, so 40-minute double on the Thursday afternoon. This one was at 5-minute pace, took 40 minutes, and we got 8K. So again, it's a little sprinkle. Then we move on to Friday. So Friday was, if you guys saw my previous upload, if you haven't actually seen it, super proud of that one. Probably my best yet. I'm gonna say it. I think it's my best workout video yet. If you haven't seen that, firstly, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing? And if you have seen it, I hope you liked it because yeah, I thought it was really, really great. But if you wanted to see or see the visual breakdown of how that session went out, you can just watch my previous video. But let's get into the little breakdown. So the session was 3 by 3K with a 2-minute recovery jog in between all of those 3Ks. Then we had a 1K where I was aiming to do basically just as fast as I could, or as fast as my legs would take me. So of course the goal for this session was to dial in marathon pace, that 350 per kilometer pace, and just try to get as comfortable and as efficient as possible at those paces. I ran in the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PBs once again. So yeah, had a bit of a pep in my step, felt springy. Let's see how we went. So for the Warm up, it was just shy of 5K and it was 5:14 pace average. We then got into our first 3 km rep and this was at 3:52 pace. I will note that I did this session a little bit later in the morning than I usually would. I think we started the warm up at 6:30. So yeah, it was getting pretty hot as the session went on. The second 3K I did at 3:50 pace, so bang on. I did note that in the session, I was still feeling really quite comfortable at this stage. And yeah, I was feeling really good, really confident. Went into the final 3K. This one was 3:53 average, so it was a little bit slower. I will admit the effort level was definitely getting up there. I noted how hot I was feeling and how much I was actually sweating. Yeah, it probably felt a little bit harder than I would have liked it to. Definitely didn't feel as easy as it did on Tuesday when I was doing those 4x2K reps. But overall, I'm still really happy with how I executed the session and got it done. Then we had a 2-minute recovery jog after that before I got into my final 1K of the workout portion of the session. This one was done at 3:34 pace. So the idea behind pacing was that was just to run whatever I could. And to be honest, that was just as fast as my legs would take me at this stage. I tried to sort of run around that 3:30 pace. But overall, yeah, I ended up running a little bit slower than that. And that was basically just as fast as my legs would go at that point. I basically just wanted to introduce a little bit of a faster stimulus after I just hit the marathon session, just to work on building that speed, or putting speed through the legs once they've had some fatigue thrown through them. So perfect workout in my eyes. I may not have hit all of the splits bang on 350, but the effort was there and I'm overall really happy with it. So ran for an hour and 28, got in 20 Ks for the morning. So again, sprinkling in that extra mileage. I think last Friday was about a 15 or 16K morning. So definitely seeing a little bit of an increase there. It's the peak weeks, baby. We got to do what we got to do. Moving on to Saturday. I will admit, Saturday, I was feeling pretty sore. Nothing to really cry about, but I ran 12K and it was just over an hour and just a little bit slower than 5-minute pace. I ran with Michaela on the bike, just tried to flush out that session from the day before I had the big Sunday longie. This was definitely a big Sunday longie and I've got a lot to say about this, so let's get into it. So the Sunday longie, guys, this one was another 2.5 hour slog. This time I included 30 minutes at marathon pace into the session. So last week we did 3x5 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So the 5 minutes were at marathon pace and the 5 minutes off were kind of a float around 4:20 to 4:30 pace. So this one we had 30 minutes at marathon pace. So around that 350 average. And we did it pretty late into the run. So for the run in total, I ran 33 kilometers. It took me 2 hours and 32 minutes and it was a 4:38 average pace for the entire run. So first thing I'm gonna say is I ran in the Neo Zens. The reason I did this, I'm not entirely sure. Basically, my next few long runs, I'm gonna be using my race shoe, which is the Adios Pro 4s from Adidas. And they have about 15 Ks on them right now. And I didn't want to essentially add another 33 Ks onto those because I'm gonna be adding probably another 33 to 35 next week and then the same the week after. And then I'm gonna be racing in them 2 weeks later. So I was trying to just preserve those shoes as much as I could. So I opted to wear the Neo Zens because I knew they would be comfortable. I knew the effort was going to be harder because when I did the 3x5 minutes last week in the Neo Zens, they felt like literal bricks and it was really hard to get going in. I knew it was going to be tough. I thought, just suck it up, Dave. Enjoy the comfort on the first part of the long run and then just grit your teeth and hang on. So that's what I had to do. Another thing I will note about this session or this run, the morning was disgusting. It was humid. I knew it was going to be a long morning when I was 1 kilometer into the run and I was just absolutely dripping. It was just going to be a tough morning. And that's exactly what it was. This was the hardest long run I've done in a while. And when I finished this long run, I was pretty beat up. I sat down on a chair by myself with my head down and just pretty much breathed by myself for like 5 minutes before I could even do anything. I just had to like chill. So for the morning, I was gonna run the first hour and 45 minutes at an easy pace. That's what we did. We averaged 4:47 per kilometer, although purely just because of the humidity, I think genuinely take like 5 to 10 seconds off, and that was the effort. It was one of those mornings where there would have been at least a good 5 to 10 seconds per K detriment just because of the shit weather. Like, it was, yeah, I'm not going to talk any more about the weather, but it was just so gross. I actually did this with a couple of the boys. So there was a little bit of a group, and then they finished, and then I was ready for me to go into my 30 minutes at marathon pace. So 30 minutes at marathon pace, I managed to average 3:58s. So I was like 8 seconds off the goal time that I was gonna strive towards. But in all fairness, I genuinely think I was running about a 3:50 pace effort. Just purely because of the humidity, the shoes. The shoes made it so tough. I literally hated my life when I was running that 30 minutes, and I was holding on for dear life. It was tough. It was tough. Like, let's have a look at my heart rate data. So it reckons for like the last 10 minutes of that 30 minutes, I was averaging like 190 to 199 beats per minute. So my heart rate just skyrocketed, and it literally turned into an all-out effort, which I know wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. And I knew that while I was running, but something about it I just thought, this is going to be good mental training for me. It doesn't get much harder than this, except for when you're in the race. So if I can get through this, I can get through anything. And I did manage to get through it, but the paces showed that it was a fair bit slower at 3:58 average. When I finished that 30-minute rep, I paused the watch. I didn't go straight into my cooldown because I was absolutely cooked. But when I paused my watch, I just like hands on knees. I was hunched over, and my vision was blurry. My head was throbbing. Like, it felt like I could feel my heartbeat through my whole head. Like, it was doom, 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 doom. My whole body was just like pulsing, and I thought, shit, that was an all-out effort. But I persevered, got through. Surely there's some mental gains there that I've gained. Just full David Goggins vibes right there. But ultimately made it through. And then I had just over a 15-minute cooldown to get to 33K. I did this one at 5:07 average. When I say I was battling through that cooldown, I was absolutely battling. Like, I fueled well. I think I had 3 gels throughout the run. Probably could have got away with 4. If it was a race, I would have definitely had 4 for that. But the humidity just zapped me, and I was just fucked, for lack of a better word. Yeah, I was cooked. But we made it through, and that is the Sunday long run. Again, 33Ks banked. We've got another big one coming up this weekend. But you guys will hear all about that next week. But that is going to conclude the training breakdown segment of this week's Training Diaries. Now what we're going to get into is the Q&A segment, where I answer the questions that you guys have sent into my Instagram on my question box, on my story. And I hand select a few that I think you guys would enjoy, and then I answer them as off the cuff and as unprepared as possible and as honest as possible. So let's get into it. All right, so the first question is from D. Loz. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that. At what time do you go to bed, and at what time do you wake up? So Michaela, my fiance, and we have this thing where as soon as it hits 8:30, no matter what we're doing, like, we could be halfway through an episode of a TV show, it could be a season finale of a TV show that has 10 minutes to go, we will turn the TV off and then start our bedtime routine, which is like, I don't know, getting Chili ready for bed. Chili's my dog. And brush our teeth and then get into bed. So usually 8:30 is non-negotiable. Have my magnesium, bang, to bed. and then falling asleep by 8:45. So usually I'm asleep by between 8:45 to 9 p.m. at the very latest. And then when I get up, when I'm training with the group, I'm getting up at 3:50, which is probably going to be pretty shocking for people that aren't Australian or even live in Queensland. We are super early risers around here just because it gets too hot. And we like to get shit done nice and early. So if I'm not getting up at 3:50 to run with the group, I'm getting up at 4:30 to run on the treadmill. But those are usually the times I'm going to bed and waking up. So hope that was helpful. Next one's from Nico Raisin. So what is the longest run I should be doing in a marathon training block? So the longest run I would say that you should be doing, depending on how experienced you are in the marathon, if this is your debut marathon, and how experienced you are at running in general, I think doing at least a 2.5 hour to 2 hours of 45 is gonna help you monumentally. You basically just have to you're never gonna be able to put yourself through what you go through in a marathon, but doing those big long runs, if you're a beginner runner, definitely just it's more about getting the long run done. If you're more of an advanced athlete, more experienced, then it'll be more about doing that and I guess doing it at a somewhat decent pace with maybe some marathon efforts thrown in to mix it up. But if you're just beginning and you're just kind of starting out, I think building yourself up to maybe that 2.5 hour to 2 hours 45 is going to be pretty important. When getting up to that 3 hours, I mean, that's a pretty big shift for anyone. But I think that 2 hours 30 to 2 hours 45 is going to be a pretty solid long run and something that you can definitely work yourself up to in a training block leading into your marathon. Next one is from Lockie Edmonds. So do you have a coach yourself? So I said this in the last video, but I'm coaching myself. I'm following my 16-week marathon ebook. I'm following the 245 to 255 with some slight adjustments to personalize it for me and my schedule and my mileage goals. So yeah, I'm following that. Don't have a coach. I guess I could call myself my own coach, but that's the situation. Last one is from Zaf1. So Anthony, shout out to you, mates. So what gels/drinks and how many/often are you planning on taking during the Ballarat Marathon? So I have the same fueling strategy that I found has just really worked for me, and that is taking a Morton Gel 160, so that's a 40-gram gel, every 30 minutes. I have one just before the marathon starts, and then I have one 30 minutes on from then all the way to the finish line. That's pretty much my carb intake. I'm gonna be drinking water at every station, and I've got salt tabs I'm gonna be taking with pretty much every gel that I have as well, just so I make sure that I keep my sodium levels up. I am prone to cramping, although I do think that it was because of lack of strength training last block, and I've been absolutely keeping up the strength training this block more than pretty much I ever have in the last maybe 3 years. So I have really high hopes for that. So I bet if I can keep on top of my carbs and I can keep on top of my sodium levels and like electrolytes, then I know that I should hopefully, theoretically, be all right. But that is the plan. Gel every 30 minutes, big carb load the 2 days leading up and the morning of. And I'm also gonna do a bit of a sodium or electrolyte load the day before as well, and just make sure I'm super hydrated and the body is just primed and ready to go. But that is all of the questions for the Q&A segment of the Training Diaries. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. I just want to give a quick shout out to all of you guys and thank you all for all of the support so far on the Project Ballarat 245 series. Let's keep this good thing going and like, subscribe, and share the channel if you've been enjoying the content so far. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll be back again next week with all of the Training Diaries goodness. See you in the next one.